with disabilities. When the ANC assumed office in January 2023, it did so conscious of the renewed mandate granted in 2019 to restore democratic institutions and return the country to a path of transformation, growth, and development. Guided by the resolutions of the 55th National Conference, the National Executive Committee identified two overarching objectives for its term: to defend and advance the gains of freedom and the national democratic revolution, and to rebuild the unity of the people, the ANC, the Alliance, and the broader democratic movement through renewal. Major developments 2022 to 2025. This midterm report assesses progress since the ANC's 55th National Conference against the strategic objectives of the national democratic revolution. At its core, the NDR remains focused on achieving fundamental socio-economic transformation and creating a better life for all. The primary yardstick for this assessment is the lived condition of the motive forces of the revolution and the extent to which the historic legacies of apartheid, colonialism, and patriarchy, poverty, unemployment, and inequality are being resolved across their racial, gendered, class-based, and spatial dimensions. South Africa's demographic profile has continued to evolve over this period. By the end of 2022, the population stood at approximately 62 million, rising to 63.1 million by mid-2025. A defining structural feature remains extreme spatial concentration. Nearly 57% of South Africans reside in Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, and the Western Cape, which together generate over 63% of the national gross domestic product. This alignment between population density and economic power continues to shape migration, infrastructure pressure, labor markets, and the unequal distribution of opportunity. Although the youth bulge is stabilizing, young people remain the country's largest population cohort. The 20.8 million South Africans aged 15 to 35 constitute 33.1% of the population, followed by adults aged 35 to 59 at 19.2 million, children aged 0 to 14 at 16.5 million, and older persons above 60 at 6.6 million. This structure confirms that the future of the NDR will be decisively shaped by whether young people are integrated in economic, social, and political life. The 2025 Statistics South Africa report on the social profile of youth presents a sobering reality. Youth unemployment remains the single greatest structural crisis. It rose from 36.8% in 2014 to 45.5% in 2024, reflecting weak growth, low labor absorption, and persistent skills mismatches. Rising hunger is also disproportionately affecting youth, with food security increasing from 13.5% in 2014 to 15.8% in 2023. There have been notable improvements in youth living conditions. The proportion of youth living in formal housing rose from 79.6% to 84% by 2023, particularly in the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. However, safety remains a major concern. While over 81% of youth felt safe during the day in 2024, fewer than one-third felt safe at night. Young men aged 16 to 34 face the highest exposure to violent crime, theft, and street robbery. Educational participation has improved but remains uneven. About 75% of youth were enrolled in some form of education in 2024. Higher education participation rose modestly from 11.9% to 13.2%, still below the National Development Plan target of 16%. Youth with tertiary education remain the least likely to be unemployed, confirming the economic value of education. However, enrollment in TVET colleges declined slightly, while growth in other colleges and adult education has not kept pace with demand. The period also marks 30 years since the Beijing Women's Conference of 1995, a turning point in global gender equality, yet progress remains slow. The 2025 Global Gender Gap Report shows that across 100 countries, a gender gap of more than 30% persists across employment, political power, education, and health. UN Women estimates that full parity is still 70 years away without decisive intervention. In South Africa, women now constitute 51.1% of the population and head 42.3% of households. Female-headed households are more common in rural areas, reflecting the enduring legacy of migrant labor and the disproportionate burden of care work on women. Since 1994, South Africa has made significant gains in social policy and human development. Life expectancy reached 64 years for men and 69.6 years for women by 2025. HIV and AIDS interventions have saved millions of lives, yet HIV prevalence among women aged 15 to 49 rose from 21.3% in 2019 to 23.6% in 2025, exposing deep structural vulnerability. South Africa's progress in women's education is among the most striking democratic achievements. Women now dominate enrollment across most education levels, with the country ranking first globally for women's educational participation in 2025. However, labor market outcomes remain deeply unequal. Women's unemployment increased from 27.3% in 2015 to 35.9% in 2025. Most employed women are concentrated in social services, trade, finance, and domestic work. The historic demand for equal pay, articulated in 1954, remains far from realized. South Africa ranks 111th globally on the gender wage gap. Gender-based violence and femicide remain one of the gravest threats of women's emancipation. Declared a national crisis in 2019, GBVF persists despite legislative reforms. the establishment of a national strategic plan, and the creation of a statutory GBV Council. Women's political representation regressed after the 2024 elections. Women now hold 171 of 400 parliamentary seats and only 14 of 32 cabinet positions, down from parity in the previous administration. South Africa's political economy remains shaped by apartheid, colonial, and patriarchal legacies, but the social composition of the motive forces has changed significantly. The working class expanded in absolute terms, with employment of more than doubling from 8 million in 1994 to about 16.8 million by 2025. However, growth occurred mainly in services, construction, and public employment, rather than in mining and manufacturing, which declined due to mechanization, instability, and global competition. The rise of outsourcing, casualization, and informal work has fundamentally transformed labor relations. Many workers now exist in low-wage, insecure employment without benefits. This has produced a growing class of the working poor and a broader precariat. Over 3 decades, South Africa's once cohesive labor movement fragmented significantly. COSATU split, giving rise to SAFTU and other formations. Union density declined, particularly among young and informal workers. This erosion weakens one of the historic pillars of the National Democratic Revolution. Alongside the employed working class, the unemployed have grown into a massive social stratum. Persistent high unemployment condemns millions, especially youth, to poverty, dependence, and social exclusion. The social wage remains a critical buffer. Free basic services, public health care, housing, and income support prevent deeper social collapse. However, high dependence on the state leaves communities vulnerable when services fall, and exclusion from economic participation increases exposure to crime, populism, and political alienation. Urbanization and secular migration between rural and urban areas continue to shape working class livelihoods. Historically, the rural and urban poor formed the backbone of ANC support. This loyalty is now under strain as material conditions stagnate or deteriorate. Rural South Africa, especially former Bantustan areas, remains among the most marginalized regions. While democracy delivered clinics, roads, electricity, and social grants, many rural municipalities are now fiscally distressed and struggle to sustain services due to poverty and weak administrative capacity. The land question remains central to rural transformation. Secure tenure and productive land remain out of reach for millions. Though black farmers now account for about 10% of agricultural output, contributing increasingly to food security and exports. Traditional leaders remain influential in rural governance. And while relations with the ANC are broadly cooperative, tensions persist around women's land rights. One of the most significant structural shifts since 1994 has been the expansion of the black middle strata. By 2018, roughly half of the country's middle-income population was black. This represents a profound transformation of class structure. However, governance failures, corruption, and slow economic reform have eroded ANC support among this group. While the white middle strata largely consolidated behind opposition parties, renewal therefore requires fresh approaches to engaging both the working class and the middle strata. The expansion of the social wage remains one of the most decisive achievements of the NDR. By 2024, over 90% of households had access to electricity, nearly 88% to piped water, and over 83% to improved sanitation. Yet the limits of social policy have become evident amid economic stagnation. The COVID-19 shock and the Ukraine war, food insecurity rose sharply, with 27% of households facing moderate to severe hunger by 2023. Children remain the most vulnerable. In response, the 7th administration launched a coordinated national effort to combat hunger and malnutrition, reaffirming food security as a core national priority. Spatial inequality remains one of the most stubborn remnants of apartheid. The adoption of the National Spatial Development Framework 2050 in 2023 represents a strategic attempt to reverse this inheritance by integrating urban and rural development, strengthening development corridors, expanding infrastructure, and promoting ecological sustainability. Therefore, while the transformation journey since 1994 has delivered undeniable social and human development gains, deep structural challenges persist. The National Democratic Revolution, therefore, comrades, remains incomplete. Its continuation depends on decisive leadership, ethical governance, economic renewal, and the full remobilization of the motive forces around a renewed vision of shared prosperity. Major global events and trends emerging from the COVID-19 pandemic that gripped the world and South Africa from the end of 2019. The period since the 55th National Conference, 2022 to 2025, has been marked by profound global disruptions and structural shifts that continue to reshape geopolitics, economics, technology, and the international governance landscape. For the ANC, the Alliance, and the mass democratic movement, these developments from the strategic backdrop against which national priorities, organizational renewal, and international engagement must be understood. The world has entered an era defined simultaneously by technological acceleration, heightened geopolitical contestation, climate instability, and competing visions of global governance. The rapid advance of artificial intelligence since 2022 has transformed global production systems, labor markets, and economic competition. The scale of computational power required for AI has dramatically increased global demand for energy, critical minerals, and rare earth metals, intensifying competition for access to Africa's mineral resources with significant regional and geopolitical implications. At the same time, the convergence of finance capital, big technology, and political power has accelerated. Large technology corporations now wield influence comparable to sovereign actors. While financial markets have aligned themselves with this technological consolidation, this has created new forms of global inequality. and reinforce the dominance of developed economies within the digital capitalist order. Multilateralism has come under sustained attack as major powers increasingly undermine global institutions, particularly the United Nations, WTO, and World Health Organization, in favor of unilateral action and exclusive blocs. South Africa, led by President Ramaphosa, used its presidency of 2025 G20 Summit, held under the theme, Equality, Solidarity, and Sustainability, to make a progressive intervention in this global conjuncture. The theme resonated widely, reflecting global demands for a more just economic order, fairer financial systems, and inclusive digital transformation. The period has also seen the continued rise of right-wing populism across Europe, North America, Latin America, and parts of Asia. Economic stagnation, cultural polarization, and declining trust in democratic institutions have fueled narrow nationalism, anti-immigration sentiment, and attacks on pluralism. A number of regional crises threaten to escalate into broader geopolitical conflicts, including the Russia-Ukraine war, Israel's continued genocidal assault on the Palestinian people despite recent peace agreements, and the intensifying strategic rivalry between the United States and China in the Indo-Pacific region. Despite continental commitments to silence the guns, Africa has experienced significant conflicts and instability. These interconnected developments influence migration patterns, economic prospects, and the broader strategic environment for SADC and the continent. The world, including South Africa, has faced intensifying climate-related disasters, heat waves, floods, droughts, and cyclones, disrupting livelihoods and food systems. Notwithstanding domestic challenges, the period has seen notable improvements in South Africa, including the end of load shedding in 2024. South Africa's exit from the FATF grey list, economic growth, and increased investment levels. These developments can help re-anchor confidence, even as socio-economic pressures related to poverty, unemployment, and inequality persist and demand urgent coordinated interventions. For the ANC, the Alliance, and the MDM, this global context, comrades, underscores the necessity of strategic clarity, organizational renewal, strengthened state capacity, and principled internationalism. ANC renewal. The ANC emerged as a product of a specific historical moment in the evolution of resistance against colonialism. At every critical historical juncture, the ANC demonstrated an ability to adapt to new conditions, mobilize the people, and position itself at the forefront of popular resistance. This capacity for adaptation and self-renewal is therefore not new. It is intrinsic to the ANC's historical identity and revolutionary character. Following its unbanning in 1990, the movement confronted one of the most complex phases in its history. It was required to rebuild a mass legal presence inside the country after 3 decades of exile, while simultaneously negotiating the political future of South Africa, confronting third force violence, and preparing for democratic elections. This was a period marked by extraordinary organizational discipline, unity of purpose, and strategic clarity. These qualities enabled the ANC to lead South Africa's peaceful transition to democracy in 1994. After securing an overwhelming mandate in the first democratic elections, the ANC used the transition period as a strategic beachhead to begin the transformation of South African society. This phase included the introduction of the Reconstruction and Development Program to address the basic needs of the majority, the dismantling of the apartheid legal and administrative system, the negotiation and adoption of a progressive constitution in 1996, the establishment of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the enactment of transformative labor legislation, affirmative action and broad-based black economic empowerment, and the reintegration of South Africa into the African continent and the international community. During this period, the ANC commanded overwhelming electoral support. It secured more than 2/3 of the popular vote in both the 1999 and 2004 national elections. These victories reflected not only political dominance, but also deep social legitimacy, which was rooted in the organization's historical role in liberation and its early achievements in improving the material conditions of the people. However, from the mid-2000s onward, the organization began to experience a slow erosion of public trust. Whilst the ANC retained strong majorities in successive elections in 2009, 2014, and 2019, the quality of governance and the organization's moral standing increasingly came under strain. The 2016 local government elections marked a decisive turning point when the ANC lost its majority in key metropolitan municipalities such as Johannesburg, Tshwane, Ekurhuleni, and Nelson Mandela Bay. By 2021, ANC support had fallen below 50% in local government, nationally, for the first time. The 2024 national and provincial elections confirmed this downward trajectory when the ANC's national support dropped to around 40%, forcing the formation of coalition governments and leading the NEC to characterize the outcome as a strategic setback for the National Democratic Revolution. This decline, comrades, was not accidental. It was driven by a combination of corruption, state capture, governance failures, service delivery breakdowns, economic stagnation, persistently high unemployment, and growing social alienation. This development severely undermined the ANC's moral authority and weakened its connection with key sections of the motive forces, particularly the youth and sections of the working and middle classes. These 3 decades after democracy, South African society has evolved profoundly. It has become more urbanized, more digitally connected, more socially complex, and more globally integrated. At the same time, the ANC has accumulated deep internal weaknesses. This includes declining organizational discipline, factionalism driven by access to resources rather than ideological contestation, the entrenchment of patronage networks, widespread corruption, weakened grassroots structures, and growing distance between leaders and communities. Renewal, comrades, is therefore no longer optional. It is an existential imperative for the survival of the organization and the continuation of the National Democratic Revolution. The ANC recognizes that renewal is not about nostalgia or rhetorical recommitment to the past. It is about rebuilding political, organizational, and ethical capacity to lead in a radically changing world shaped by digital transformation, climate change, shifting global power relations, and new patterns of social mobilization. The organization must remain fundamentally future-oriented. If it becomes trapped in its heroic past, it will lose relevance to new generations. The challenge of renewal is not unique to the ANC. Other long-established liberation movements and progressive parties across the world have faced similar crises. The renewal of the Communist Party of Vietnam through the Doi Moi reforms demonstrated how a liberation movement in power can undertake deep political, economic, and organizational renewal and achieve sustained growth, poverty reduction, and national development. European social democratic parties, too, have been forced to engage in continual reinvention following electoral defeat. These experiences show that renewal is a long-term, systemic process that requires ideological clarity, institutional reform, leadership discipline, economic innovation, and sustained mass engagement. Against this backdrop, the ANC has articulated a renewal mission structured around two interlinked objectives. The first is to reroute the ANC among the people as their servant, with ethical and capable cadres working alongside communities to address their daily struggles. The second is to harness the natural and human endowments of South Africa to accelerate the resolution of unemployment, poverty, and inequality, and to build a sovereign, united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and prosperous African state. To achieve this, the organization must strengthen its grassroots structures, renew its organizational culture, restore ideological depth, rebuild ethical leadership, modernize its systems of governance and communication, ensure financial sustainability, and institutionalize accountability and performance management. The ANC undertakes this renewal from a position of vulnerability. Internally, there are forces driven by personal accumulation rather than public service. Externally, domestic and global anti-transformation forces seek to exploit the organization's weaknesses to reverse the gains of the democratic project. This vulnerability places the ANC at a historic crossroads. It can retreat defensively into factionalism and denial, or it can undertake a decisive strategic reset. The 55th National Conference provided a framework for the renewal by mandating the NEC to address the deterioration of membership quality, conduct a membership audit, rebuild branches, strengthen cadre development, entrench non-racialism and non-sexism, intensify the fight against corruption, strengthen accountability and performance frameworks, renew leadership selection processes, mobilize motive forces and sectors, improve election campaign capacity, and strengthen the tripartite alliance. These resolutions, comrades, form the operational backbone of the current renewal program. One of the most significant renewal interventions since 2022 has been the introduction of the ANC Foundation course, launched formally in October 2024. This course represents the most comprehensive political education program in decades. It seeks to ensure that all ANC members understand the organization's history, mission, values, revolutionary morality, the constitution, governance systems, the role of branches, and the contemporary national and global context. Within a year of its launch, more than 125,000 members had participated across all provinces and levels of leadership. Where implemented with seriousness, the foundation course has already strengthened. The foundation course, where implemented with seriousness, The foundation course has already strengthened discipline, unity, and political clarity. However, in some areas, it has been treated as a compliance exercise, particularly where comrades were under pressure to meet conference deadlines. The renewal of branches, comrades, remains a central pillar of organizational revival. Since the 1997 National Conference, the ANC has emphasized the concept of the activist branch as the primary site of community organization and mobilization. However, over time, many branches became functional only during leadership contests and conference periods. To address this, the branch functionality barometer was developed and piloted in 2023 during the Solplaki Awards, with full national rollout taking place in 2025. By the time of the NGC, more than 860 branches had completed the audit, although participation varied significantly across provinces. The barometer is intended to entrench a culture of routine reporting, community engagement, and constitutional compliance, thereby breaking the cycle of conference branches and restoring the ANC as a permanent presence in the daily lives of communities. To strengthen accountability and performance, the ANC has re-established its policy, monitoring, and evaluation capacity. Annual reports by the Secretary General have been reinstated since 2023, restoring a culture of organizational reporting. An outcome-based manifesto monitoring framework has been introduced to track implementation of the 2024 manifesto, the local government action plan, and the 10-point economic action plan. An accountability framework has also been adopted, which guided the first ANC leadership baseline survey in 2024. This survey revealed encouraging participation by NEC and PEC members, but worrying low participation by regional executive committees, despite their critical role in overseeing branches and local government. Reviews of councillors, MPs, and MPLs are now underway as part of strengthening performance management across the organization. However, the absence of effective consequence management remains a structural weakness. The development of a comprehensive consequence management framework is therefore an urgent priority. The ANC Vision 2032, developed through the work of the First Renewal Commission, articulates a long-term vision for the movement's future. Although it was not fully debated at the 55th National Conference due to time constraints, it now informs the policy discussions at this NGC. The re-establishment of the Political Education Department, the strengthening of the O.R. Tambo School of Leadership, and participation in the Julius Nyerere School of Leadership form part of a renewed effort to deepen ideological capacity and develop cadres who can navigate complex challenges such as economic transformation, social inequality, digitalization, climate change, and global geopolitics. The report further situates the current renewal effort within a long historical cycle of organizational adaptation since 1994. In response, the NEC has now appointed a second renewal commission to guide the implementation of the renewal mission, monitor progress, and report regularly to the officials and the NEC. The mandate of this commission is to ensure that renewal permeates all 5 pillars of the National Democratic Revolution: the state, the economy, the ANC, and the motive forces, the battle of ideas, and international work. The strategic task ahead is therefore to rebuild the ANC as an ethical, disciplined, people-centered organization that is capable of governing effectively and leading society through a new phase of transformation. The ANC now stands at a historical crossroads. The renewal mission is not merely an internal organizational exercise. It is a national political imperative. Either the movement undertakes deep, sustained, and irreversible renewal, or it takes risks of irreversible decline. Only a renewed ANC, rooted among the people and guided by integrity, competence, and vision, can continue to lead South Africa towards the national democratic society envisaged in the Freedom Charter. The 2024 elections and the government of national unity. The strategic objective of the African National Congress remains the creation of a united, non-racial, non-sexist, prosperous, and democratic South Africa. At every historic moment, the ANC has sought to creatively adapt its methods in order to advance the interests of the people and the broader project of the National Democratic Revolution. The 2024 national and provincial elections represent one such historic juncture, requiring not only sober reflection but bold tactical innovation. The ANC does not contest elections merely to occupy positions in government or to enjoy the privileges of office. It contests elections in order to secure a popular mandate to govern and to use state power as a lever for socio-economic transformation. State power, comrades, is central to the implementation of the NDR because only through government authority can the redistribution of resources, large-scale development, social protection, and institutional reform be realized. For this reason, electoral setbacks carry profound consequences for transformation. The electoral decline of the ANC did not begin in 2024. It unfolded over a decade, starting with the loss of key metropolitan municipalities in the 2016 local government elections. This setback was deepened in 2021, when more than 80 municipalities emerged as hung councils following the local elections. These developments signaled growing urban dissatisfaction, governance failures, and declining public confidence in the movement. The 2024 elections, therefore, represent the culmination of a longer process of erosion in electoral support rather than a sudden rupture. Nevertheless, the scale and implications of the 2024 outcome marked a historic break with the post-1994 pattern of ANC dominance. The 29 May 2024 national and provincial elections were among the most fiercely contested in South Africa's democratic history. Politically, the ANC faced an unprecedented ideological and organizational onslaught. Powerful domestic and international forces aligned around a shared objective to remove the liberation movement entirely from state power. This objective united an array of right-wing parties, breakaway formations from the liberation movement, sections of the corporate media, and the globally networked conservative interest. New political parties emerged with significant funding and media visibility, explicitly positioned as vehicles to break the ANC's hold on national government. The election was therefore not only a contest between parties, but a struggle over the direction of South Africa's transformation project itself. For the first time since 1994, the ANC failed to secure an outright majority at the national level. The party's support dropped to approximately 40%, down sharply from 57% in 2019. The ANC also fell below 50% in its two most economically and demographically significant provinces, Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. In Gauteng, the ANC secured about 34.7% of the vote, while in KwaZulu-Natal it fell to a historic low of approximately 17%. The Northern Cape narrowly slipped below the majority threshold as well. However, the ANC retained outright majorities in Limpopo, the Eastern Cape, Northwest, the Free State, and Mpumalanga. The Democratic Alliance consolidated control in the Western Cape, while Umkhonto weSizwe secured a majority in KwaZulu-Natal. The outcome reflected the deepening urban-rural divide in electoral behavior and confirmed the long-term trend of declining ANC support in metropolitan centers. The National Executive Committee correctly characterized the 2024 election outcome as a strategic setback for the ANC and the broader democratic movement. The movement's hegemony was seriously weakened, and for the first time since the transition, state power came close to shifting entirely out of the hands of the liberation forces. Such a development, comrades, would have carried devastating implications for the project of building a national democratic society, particularly in relation to transformation of property relations, social policy, and South Africa's progressive foreign policy posture. The immediate aftermath of the elections was marked by heightened political tension and institutional risk. A grouping of parties led by MKP made unsubstantiated allegations of widespread electoral fraud and issued thinly veiled threats of unrest should the Independent Electoral Commission release the final results as scheduled. The rhetoric was inflammatory and created an atmosphere of anxiety and instability. Despite this pressure, the IEC fulfilled its constitutional responsibility and announced the official results on the 2nd of June, 2024. From that point, responsibility shifted decisively to political parties represented in Parliament to determine the future configuration of the state under radically altered political conditions. Despite the loss of its majority, the ANC remained the single largest party in the National Assembly, in keeping with its historical mission and its constitutional obligations. The ANC moved swiftly to stabilize the political environment and prevent a descent into uncertainty or institutional paralysis. At its meeting on the 6th of June, 2024, the National Executive Committee considered the implications of the election results and identified three immediate objectives: to promote national unity and stability, to safeguard the continued use of state power in advancing the strategic goals of the NDR, and to open space for rebuilding public confidence and trust, particularly among the motive forces. To achieve these objectives, the National Executive Committee evaluated four possible post-election scenarios. The first option was for the ANC to move into opposition. This option was rejected as a dereliction of national and revolutionary duty. No serious liberation movement voluntarily abandons state power while remaining the largest party, particularly when the transformation project remains incomplete and under threat. Even right-wing parties seek state power as an instrument for advancing their own agendas. It will therefore be irrational for a progressive movement to surrender that instrument at the moment of historic vulnerability. The second option, comrades, considered was the formation of a grand coalition with one or two large parties, such as the Democratic Alliance, the Economic Freedom Fighters, or MKP. This option was rejected because it would have allowed a single coalition partner to exercise veto power over policy, fundamentally distorting the strategic program of the ANC and holding the movement hostage to the agenda of a rival force. The third option was to govern through a minority government, supported by shifting confidence and supply arrangements. While superficially attractive, this option was rejected on the grounds of instability. A minority government would have been perpetually vulnerable to parliamentary defeat, transactional bargaining, and policy paralysis. The fourth option was the formation of an inclusive government of national unity. After extensive debate, this option was adopted unanimously by the National Executive Committee as the most responsible and viable tactical response to the new balance of forces. The GNU was viewed as the only mechanism capable of ensuring political stability, preserving continuity of state functions, and defending the strategic core of the transformation agenda in a fragmented political environment. Drawing on historical precedents, including the first GNU of the early democratic period, the NEC understood the formation of a unity government as a tactical intervention rather than a strategic compromise. The ANC's long-term objectives remained unchanged. The GNU was not adopted to retain power for its own sake, but to prevent a dangerous power vacuum, protect democratic gains, and maintain momentum in the transformation program. Tactically, the ANC recognized that unity governments embody the dialectic of unity and struggle, containing inherent contradictions that require constant political management. In line with the coalition framework adopted in April 2023, pursuant to resolutions of the 55th National Conference, the NEC appointed a negotiating team led by the national officials. This team was tasked with engaging all parliamentary parties, developing a minimum program for the GNU, defining governance modalities, and securing commitment to a shared framework of cooperation. These efforts resulted in the signing of a GNU statement of intent by the ANC and 10 other parties, although one later withdrew. On 14th June 2024, President Cyril Ramaphosa was duly re-elected and the Speaker of Parliament was chosen through the same inclusive process. By 30th June 2024, a GNU cabinet had been appointed, marking one of the fastest post-election government formations in a democratic history. The ANC has consistently framed the GNU as a temporary tactical instrument arising from a specific balance of forces rather than a shift in strategic orientation. The movement has remained clear that its identity as a liberation movement and its commitment to the NDR have not changed. The GNU is understood as an adaptive response to a strategic setback, not as an abandonment of core principles. As the largest party in parliament and the leader of the GNU, the ANC retained control of most of the key ministries, central to the execution of the transformation agenda. This position placed immense responsibility on ANC ministers, deputy ministers, presiding officers, and committee chairpersons to demonstrate exemplary leadership, integrity, responsiveness, and administrative capacity. The movement explicitly rejected any notion of excusing underperformance on the grounds of coalition constraints. By the time of the National General Council, the GNU had been in office for nearly 18 months. During this period, the NEC conducted a comprehensive assessment of the performance of the 7th administration, including public perceptions, improvements in service delivery, policy implementation, and the behavior of GNU partners. The assessment was anchored in the GNU Statement of Intent, which aligned with the three apex priorities articulated by President Ramaphosa at the opening of Parliament in July 2024. Driving inclusive growth and job creation, reducing poverty and the cost of living, and building a capable, ethical, and developmental state. To operationalize these priorities, the Cabinet adopted the Medium-Term Development Plan for 2024 to 2029, guided by the outcomes-based approach of the 2024 ANC Manifesto. The plan set measurable targets across key sectors. Major policy and fiscal interventions followed, including the adoption of the 2025 National Industrial Policy, the establishment of a 100 billion transformation fund, the expansion of support to spaza shops and small enterprises, the continuation of the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative, and a significant shift towards infrastructure investment exceeding 1 trillion over 3 years. The seventh administration inherited a stabilized electricity supply from the sixth administration, effectively bringing an end to load shedding. The electricity availability factor rose from below 50% in early 2023 to above 70% by late 2025. Remaining challenges include localized load reduction and the high cost of electricity. Operation Vulindlela produced further progress in transport, logistics, border management, immigration, and municipal infrastructure. Transformative legislation, such as the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act, the National Health Insurance Act, and the Expropriation Act, moved forward despite sustained opposition. Parliamentary dynamics became more complex in the absence of an ANC majority. Committee management required new tactics, and the ANC caucus had to learn to build shifting alliances on specific legislative and budgetary issues. The failure to pass the budget in April 2025 provided a critical learning moment. Following intensive negotiations, the November medium-term budget policy statement was passed smoothly, with increased allocations to education, health, infrastructure, public employment, and the social relief of distress grant. These measures marked a decisive break from austerity while stabilizing public debt. By late 2025, several positive macroeconomic signals had emerged. South Africa's removal from the Financial Action Task Force grey list, improving credit ratings, declining interest rates, and easing inflation began to lower the cost of borrowing and living. These trends suggested tentative economic recovery, though they remained fragile. Despite these gains, serious weaknesses within the GNU persisted. The Democratic Alliance repeatedly attacked core transformation policies and South Africa's progressive foreign policy stance, often using the courts, the media, and international networks to undermine government positions. Some parties engaged in conduct that threatened national cohesion and security through inappropriate foreign engagements. Government communication remained fragmented and reactive, allowing manufactured crises and opposition theatrics to dominate the public narrative. The ANC concluded that time was not in its side. The GNU will ultimately be judged not on intentions, plans, or statements, but on tangible improvements in the daily lives of the people. Implementation remained the critical test. The ANC therefore reaffirmed that defending democratic gains and advancing the NDR under conditions of political fragmentation dependent on disciplined execution, ethical leadership, and visible service delivery. State of Organization, 2022 to 2025. The African National Congress has repeatedly affirmed that it will only succeed in realizing its historic strategic objective of transforming South Africa if it is able to transform itself. This central insight, reaffirmed in the declaration of the 55th National Conference in 2022, underscores that organizational renewal is not separate from social transformation. It is a precondition for it. The ANC's roadmap to 2032 places renewal at the core of the movement's future, calling for the organization to become renewed, responsive, modernized, well-governed, adequately resourced, caring, and effective. The conference directed that all ANC structures must shift their focus decisively towards the people the movement serves and the real challenges they face in their daily lives. The state of the organization must therefore be judged by its ability to carry out this mandate among the masses of the people and through the state. The years between 2022 and 2025 have been marked by a determined, though uneven, effort to respond to this challenge. Following the 55th National Conference, the NEC was mandated to implement a focused 12-month program aimed at restoring public trust and renewing the social contract between the ANC and the people. This program prioritized several national crises that were directly affecting the daily lives of South Africans. The most immediate of this was the electricity crisis. In response to the conference resolutions, the 2023 and 2024 January 8 statements explicitly elevated the ending of load shedding as a national priority. The President declared load shedding a national emergency. Cabinet adopted the Electricity Action Plan, and a Minister of Electricity was appointed. By early 2024, South Africa experienced its longest uninterrupted period without load shedding in years. This success marked a significant turning point and allowed the state to shift attention to load reduction, infrastructure maintenance, municipal debt to Eskom, electricity affordability, and long-term energy security. Local government and service delivery formed another core pillar of renewal. The NEC established the Local Government Intervention Task Team to stabilize failing municipalities and drive a back-to-basics approach to governance. Provincial workshops were conducted with troikas and regional executive committees, and a local government intervention dashboard was developed to monitor 9 critical performance areas. The task team conducted interventions in struggling municipalities such as Mangaung, Machabeng, Malutiapofu, Makhanda, eThekwini, Buffalo City, and Nelson Mandela Bay. These engagements were supported by regular reporting to the NEC and contributions to the review of the Local Government White Paper and the Division of Revenue Act. In September 2025, the NEC adopted a 6-pillar local government action plan, followed by a national roll call that mobilized nearly 5,000 ANC councillors. The action plan places strong emphasis on community engagement, performance monitoring, and the resolution of chronic service delivery failures. The President delegated oversight of service delivery interventions to the Deputy President, while the ANC established a service delivery war room at Luthuli House, with corresponding structures in provinces and municipalities. Presidential intervention teams were deployed to eThekwini and Johannesburg. Despite these measures, progress across municipalities remained uneven, reflecting deep institutional weaknesses. The ANC also sought to reconnect with communities through the Litsima campaign, which mobilized structures to undertake regular community work, such as clean-ups, pothole repairs, soup kitchens, and environmental projects. Government simultaneously intensified its Izimbizo program to improve direct engagement with communities. With electricity stabilized, the water crisis emerged as the next major national threat. In the 2025 January 8 statement, President Ramaphosa warned that water security posed an even greater danger to the country's social and economic future than electricity. The ANC called for urgent action to strengthen water boards, upgrade aging municipal infrastructure, ring-fence water revenues, and establish financing frameworks to attract private sector participation without surrendering public ownership. The organization also urged intensification of law enforcement against sabotage, tanker corruption, and illegal connections, while calling for accelerated formalization of informal settlements, free basic services to indigent households, and the establishment of comprehensive indigent registers. Climate resilience and early warning systems were also prioritized. Despite these interventions, water insecurity remains one of the most stubborn and unresolved national challenges. Parallel to these governance interventions, the ANC intensified its focus on organizational renewal, particularly at branch level. The branch functionality barometer became the key instrument through which the organization began systematically assessing the condition of its branches. Building on work initiated during the previous term, the barometer was first piloted with 144 branches in 2023 and refined through a SNAP survey in the Free State in March 2025. This revealed that many branches lacked basic knowledge of how to develop a branch program of action. This gap informed the development of the ANC activist branch guideline. The full rollout of the barometer began in July 2025 and was expanded nationally in October and November 2025 to include all branches eligible for participation in the National General Council. By the 1st of December 2025, 811 branches had submitted data. While the data set is still provisional, it already provides valuable insight into the health of branch structures. For the first time, the organization obtained a national snapshot of the gender and age profile of branch secretaries and chairpersons. The data showed that 58.1% of branch secretaries are male and 41.9% female, indicating persistent gender imbalance. Eastern Cape, Gauteng, and the Northern Cape show relatively stronger female representation, while Mpumalanga, Limpopo, and KwaZulu-Natal exhibit the widest gender gaps. The age profile of branch chairpersons reveal an average age of just over 49 years, with minimal generation variation. This indicates that branch leadership is largely anchored in older age cohorts, with limited representation of younger cadres. Given that South Africa's median age is now 28, this presents a serious challenge for intergenerational renewal within the organization. Geographically, comrades, the majority of responding branches are located in rural villages, followed by township. Suburban and mixed areas are less represented, while informal settlements show the lowest participation. This reflects both the strength of ANC structures in rural areas and continued organizational weaknesses in fast-growing informal urban spaces. Membership trends indicate relative numerical stability in many branches, but youth membership remains significantly lower than adult membership. Qualitative responses reveal that over half of branches believe members disengage because the ANC is not sufficiently responsive to community issues. Factionalism and leadership conflicts were cited by 40% of branches, while poor internal communication and irregular meetings were also identified as major impediments. Only a small minority of branches reported no major retention challenges. Difficulties with access to the membership portal and renewal processes were also widely reported. Most responding branches operate with full branch executive committees rather than temporary task teams, which reflects that they are largely branches in good standing. However, the quality of internal governance is uneven. Minute keeping is weak. Task tracking is inconsistent, and accountability systems are fragile. While meetings are often held, many branches struggle to demonstrate systematic follow-up of decisions. The most critical weakness remains thinness of branch activism and program effectiveness in addressing concrete community issues. Branch subcommittees tend to be heavily concentrated in a limited number of portfolios, particularly political education, organizing, and safety and security. Many branches reported having no functioning subcommittees at all. This limits the organizational depth and functionality required for sustained activism. While nearly 2/3 of branches report having adopted a program of action for 2020-2025, a significant minority have none. Even where programs of actions exist, implementation is uneven and often not aligned to busy portfolios. Detailed analysis of uploaded program of actions is still underway. Member induction and participation in the foundation course remain limited. Most branches have not conducted inductions in the previous 12 months. And enrollment in the foundation course remains low in many areas. This represents a serious bottleneck in improving the political quality of membership. Election readiness at branch level displays partial mobilization ahead of the 2026 local government elections. While most branches indicate they have begun preparations, the activity data show uneven progress across voter registration, door-to-door campaigning, sectoral work, youth engagement, and digital organizing. Youth outreach and ID campaigns remain particularly weak. There is also a risk of over-reporting, quote-unquote, in progress, activity without verifiable evidence. Future assessments will require documentary proof of campaign work. The barometer confirms that branches with consistent community campaigns, regular general meetings, political education programs, and strong working relations with ward councillors perform better electorally. Conversely, comrades, weak branches contribute directly to electoral decline. Insufficient national investment in branch development, induction, and training remains a structural constraint. Negative practices such as gatekeeping and conference-only activation further undermine the standing of the organization. The organizing and membership component of the ANC's work over 2023 to 2025 was shaped by the dual imperative of rebuilding organizational structures and preparing for national and local elections. A major achievement has been the full transition from the old SpaceNet-based membership system to a new modernized digital platform. The new system enhances data integrity, allows members to manage their own profiles and renew subscriptions directly, and significantly reduces manipulation and gatekeeping. Branches now have dedicated portals to manage membership data and generate verified reports for meetings and conferences. All provinces that held conferences in 2025 used the new system successfully. The introduction of the ANC Smart Membership Card in 2024 marked another milestone. The card securely stores member data and is designed to enable future benefits and transactional functionality. By October 2025, the ANC had the ANC had 543,524 members in good standing, while manual reconciliation of payments remains necessary pending full automation. The finalization of the online payment gateway is expected to significantly reduce discrepancies. The period, comrades, also saw the support and stabilization of the League membership systems, including those of the Women's League, Youth League, and Veterans League. Priority system enhancements still underway include biometric verification, conference registration systems, and portals for international branches. Organizational rebuilding required the convening of regional and provincial conferences across most of the country. Eastern Cape, Limpopo, Mpumalanga, Northern Cape, and Gauteng all held multiple successful regional conferences. The Northern Cape additionally held a provincial conference. Northwest and Free State are scheduled to complete their conferences between late 2025 and early 2026. The NEC resolved that KwaZulu-Natal and Western Cape require a more intensive rebuilding process before further conferences can be considered. The Organizing and Membership Department also oversaw the revival and renewal of ANC leagues. All leagues are now in good standing with functional national and provincial structures. The Progressive Youth Alliance, Kwabani, and your task team up. You are a full organization. Progressive Youth Alliance, in particular, underwent significant rebuilding, including the resolution of leadership disputes in SASCO, preparations for SAUS Congress, and the dissolution of reconstitution of COSAS structures. The department played a central role in election campaigning and mobilization between 2023 and 2025. It coordinated the Siyanqoba campaign, volunteer recruitment and training, NEC deployments to weak provinces, and manifesto review engagements. Massive voter registration drives, including online registration targeting youth, were implemented nationwide. The wall-to-wall campaign in the 2024 elections demonstrated both the organizational reach of the ANC and the persistent weaknesses in volunteer recruitment and coordination. The ANC's commemorative and solidarity work also expanded, including major burials of liberation heroes, international solidarity actions, and national campaigns addressing the spaza shop crisis and gender-based violence. Mass events such as the 112th anniversary celebration in Bombela demonstrated the enduring mobilization capacity of the movement. Quality membership remains a central pillar of renewal. The 55th National Conference prioritized the political quality of membership, mandated political education cells, youth recruitment drives, and the realignment of political schools. The ANC Foundation course and renewed cadre policy seek to ensure that membership is anchored in values, discipline, and service to the people. Members are reminded that joining the ANC is not merely a symbolic act, but a commitment to activism, organizational discipline, non-racialism, non-sexism, and social justice. The state of organization between 2022 and 2025 reflects both the fragility and resilience of the ANC. The movement has demonstrated its capacity to stabilize critical national crises and to initiate meaningful organizational reform. At the same time, the scale of organizational erosion, especially at branch level, confirms that renewal remains an urgent and unfinished task. The future of the ANC as the leader of South Africa's transformation project will depend on whether it can convert these renewal initiatives into a living organizational culture rooted in service to the people, ethical leadership, and disciplined grassroots activism. Dispute resolution mechanisms and managing conflicts. The ANC established dedicated dispute resolution structures at the 55th National Conference, with further refinements at the 55th Conference, including the creation of the National Dispute Resolution Committee and Committee of Appeals, NDRC and NDRCA. While no disputes were handled in 2024 due to the national election campaign, 2025 saw a sharp escalation in disputes linked to regional and provincial conference processes. Through its work with provincial dispute resolution committees, the NDRC identified several systemic, operational, and technical weaknesses undermining organizational stability. A major challenge is the removal of the GPS verification feature from the membership scanner system, which previously confirmed venue compliance and quorum. There are also serious delays in the release of verification reports, with final reports sometimes issued only days before conferences or delayed by months. Branch secretaries do not have direct system access to these reports, heightening disputes and administrative confusion. In addition, membership data inconsistencies persist, with members appearing active in some systems and inactive in others, and unexplained fluctuations in branch numbers, undermining confidence in BBGMs and BGMs. The abuse of the appeal mechanism has increased dramatically. In some regions, nearly half of meetings are contested, leading to the emergence of parallel and competing branch structures. In the Hobusana region, for example, a cycle of repetitive appeals developed, where rerun meetings ordered by the NDRC are repeatedly re-challenged, weakening organizational authority and delaying renewal. The NDRC also faces severe capacity constraints. This contributes to delays and impacts the functioning of the NDRCA, ultimately affecting conference timelines. In 2025, the NDRC processed numerous disputes across Eastern Cape, Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and Gauteng. While most were finalized, a smaller number remain outstanding. Disputes arising from the Limpopo regional conferences led to the appointment of a second task team led by Comrade Noxolo Kivit. After engaging affected structures, the team submitted its report to the officials and the NWC and confirmed the validity of the regional conference processes. The NDRC calls for the restoration or replacement of GPS verification, faster and transparent verification reports, system access for branch secretaries, stabilization of membership data, capping abusive appeals, strengthening NDRC staffing capacity, and better alignment between the NDRC and the NDRCA. Following the incorrect ANC candidate list submitted to the IEC, ahead of the 2024 elections, the NEC appointed a task team chaired by Comrade Thembi Majola to investigate the matter. The team completed its work, submitted the report to the NEC, and made corrective recommendations on the process. The Integrity Commission. The Integrity Commission is mandated to uphold ethical conduct within the ANC and safeguard the organization from behavior that brings it into disrepute. Its work reinforces integrity as a core ANC value and strengthens ethical consciousness among leaders and members. In 2025, the Integrity Commission held more than 20 meetings, engaged with 11 comrades, and submitted 5 formal reports to the Secretary General. Amendments to its terms of reference now allow those engaged by the Integrity Commission to comment on draft findings before finalization, strengthening fairness and procedural integrity. The Integrity Commission reports persistent non-compliance with long-standing ANC resolutions, particularly the requirement that cadres accused of corruption must immediately account to the Integrity Commission. Delays and avoidance undermine public trust. The Integrity Commission calls for decisive leadership from ANC officials to enforce compliance and to ensure disciplinary consequences where required. The Integrity Commission stresses the urgent need for a visible, time-bound, and publicly communicated anti-corruption strategy. Failure to act decisively continues to erode moral authority and public confidence. A serious concern is the weak understanding of ethics and integrity among some cadres. The Integrity Commission, therefore, recommend that ethics be mandatory in leadership selection, electoral committee, vetting, and induction programs. Leadership must set the ethical tone through consistent personal conduct. The Commission emphasizes the distinction between disciplinary, legal, and integrity processes. Integrity operates at a higher moral threshold than criminal law. The reliance on innocent until proven guilty as a shield against ethical accountability has damaged the ANC and must be treated as misconduct. Money politics remains one of the most destructive forces in the organization, influencing leadership contests and fundraising. The Integrity Commission therefore warns that blurred lines between state and party finances fuel corruption, and therefore fundraising rules, transparent processes, firm enforcement, and disciplinary action for violations must be undertaken by the leadership. Factionalism, now rooted more in competition for resources than ideology, is eroding organizational unity. Weak communication has also left the ANC vulnerable to negative media narratives and reputational harm. The 55th National Conference reaffirmed the step-aside resolution, expedited corruption cases, and required public dissociation from serious wrongdoing. Since 2022, several NEC members have stepped aside, resigned, or faced disciplinary processes. Integrity reports are now a standing item at all ANC NEC meetings, and the NEC has reaffirmed the need for lifestyle audits. Further than that, ethics and integrity guide leadership selection. NEC reaffirmed that we need to strengthen ethical fundraising training, a formal ANC code of conduct and ethics be established, accountability be fundamentally strengthened, organizational renewal be urgently accelerated. Political education is affirmed as the foundation of any revolutionary movement, with the ANC emphasizing compulsory political education for all members to strengthen ideological clarity, leadership, and organizational capacity. The Political Education Subcommittee and Department are mandated to ensure comprehensive ideological training aligned with the objectives of the National Democratic Revolution. Over the past 2 years, improved coordination has been achieved among institutions such as OR Tambo School and Alliance training bodies. The 55th National Conference directed that the OR Tambo School curriculum be tailored for new members, compulsory induction be enforced for leaders and public representatives, leadership be linked to attendance of political schools, and political education cells be established. To implement these resolutions, 7 strategic priorities were adopted, including compulsory foundation training, leadership development, policy master classes, organizational training, skills training, ideological publications, and international political schools. Central to this work is the compulsory foundation course, developed in 2023-2024 and launched by the President in October 2024. The course consists of 5 modules covering the history of the ANC, its values and ethics, governance, global context, and the role of branches and members. By October 2025, over 125 members, which is 23%, and 36% of branches had participated. Mpumalanga and Gauteng lead the implementation, while Limpopo, KwaZulu-Natal, and the Western Cape lag significantly due to disputes, organizational weaknesses, and rebuilding processes. National leadership structures, including the NECs of the ANC, ANC Women's League, and the Veterans League, as well as caucuses and officials, have largely undergone training. However, the ANC Youth League NEC failed to complete its program due to poor attendance. The OR Tambo School is also delivering policy master classes on key economic and governance themes, with future focus shifting to developmental state and capacity and social policy. Induction programs for elected leadership structures and public representatives have been widely implemented since 2023. Though some provincial caucuses remain outstanding, financial governance training has been conducted for treasurers, and secretary training is being developed. Looking ahead, the OR Tambo School plans to significantly scale up leadership and governance training between 2026 and 2032. Institutional strengthening is underway, including the appointment of a new board chaired by Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe and the appointment of Comrade David Makura as the principal. The school is finalizing its long-term strategy and moving toward financial sustainability. The Julius Nyerere Leadership School, a joint initiative of 6 Southern African liberation movements, is expanding ideological governance training. Although financial constraints remain a challenge, a formal partnership exists between this school and the OR Tambo School. The subcommittee has also contributed to national political strategy development and preparation for the National General Council. Overall, political education is being revitalized as a core pillar of organizational renewal. Key recommendations include mandatory foundation course completion by all leaders by 2026 and all members by 2027, advanced leadership training at the OR Tambo School, executive training for those in government, integration of veteran cadre programs, and a full review of the ANC cadre policy ahead of the 56th National Conference. Communications. battle of ideas, and ICT. The ANC's midterm review affirms that the battle of ideas is a central pillar of the national democratic revolution, not a secondary task. Communication is the primary instrument through which the ANC interprets reality, shapes the national narrative, mobilizes the motive forces, and provides ideological leadership. Since the 55th conference, the movement has confronted an intensified ideological crisis marked by the rise of conservative, anti-transformation narratives and operating across mainstream and digital media spaces. The communications environment has fundamentally changed. Digital platforms, algorithm-driven content, misinformation networks, and online influencers now shape public opinion faster than traditional media. Truth competes with virality, and hostile forces exploit social distress, unemployment, energy insecurity, crime, and service delivery failures to frame the ANC as the source of national suffering while erasing apartheid's structural legacy and global economic pressures. This has placed growing strain on the ANC's relationship with the people. Internally, fragmented messaging, undisciplined communication, and competing centers of authority have weakened narrative coherence. The 55th conference directed that the ANC restore message discipline, centralize communication authority, and modernize its communications machinery. In response, the subcommittee prioritized strengthening the Department of Communications, Information, and Publicity as the movement's central communication authority, improved briefing cycles, validation protocols, and coordination between national, provincial, and regional structures have begun to restore coherence. Since conference, key advances including the establishment of provincial and regional communicators forums, a national communications assembly, strengthened war room communication, and expanded digital platforms such as ANC TV and podcasts. Comrades, do you want a break? No. So, Tulanige, you are drowning me. Thank you. Order, please. However, order, comrades. This is your report. Pay attention. However, internal communication systems remain uneven, especially at branch and community level, where misinformation spreads most easily. The review identifies youth as a critical ideological frontline. Youth political engagement is now driven by digital culture rather than formal political structures. Comrades, the ANC's communication during the 2021 local government and 2024 national elections shows improving coherence and multimedia production. Strategic risks remain severe, uneven provincial capacity, weak ANC government communication alignment, limited digital analytics, inconsistent message discipline, resource constraints, shrinking community media platforms, and hostile digital misinformation networks. Overall, the NGC is urged to reaffirm communication as a vital instrument of struggle, elections and by-elections campaigns. Research presented to the 55th ANC National Conference warned of a severe electoral decline, projecting support as low as 33% in 2022 and only 38% by early 2024. The actual 2024 national and provincial elections results confirmed this trajectory, with the ANC losing its outright national majority and majorities in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. The conference directed the NEC to urgently establish strong election machinery. Comrades, although the campaign followed 4 agreed phases, laying the foundation, engage voters, Maihlome and Siyanqoba, much of the energy and resources were absorbed by large centralized events that largely mobilized existing supporters rather than persuading undecided voters. The ANC's 2024 manifesto, built around 6 national priorities, was launched in February 2024 and rolled out nationwide. Community engagements revealed deep frustration over slow service delivery, unemployment, load shedding, rising cost of living. The election outcome reflected a sharp crisis of participation, while the voters' roll grew by 2.3 million over a decade. Critical weaknesses in the campaign included denial of declining by election trends, failure to address poor governance, weak accountability of deployees, detachment of leaders from communities. By-election trends since 2021 further reflected instability. From 391 by-elections, the ANC suffered a net loss of 44 wards, mainly to the IFP, EFF, and MKP. Although limited post-2024 recovery is visible in parts of the Eastern Cape and Mpumalanga. Looking ahead to the 2026 local government elections, the ANC has adopted a renewed 4-phase strategy focused on rebuilding structures, deploying full-time coordinators, training over 200,000 volunteers, rebuilding branches, registering 4.5 million first-time voters, and reactivating abstaining supporters. Success depends on 5 key factors: a functional election machine, improved public mood, visible service delivery action, credible candidate selection, and adequate campaign funding. Policy monitoring and evaluation. The Policy Monitoring and Evaluation Subcommittee was established after the 55th National Conference as part of the ANC's broader organizational renewal program. Conference elevated monitoring and evaluation to a strategic priority, mandating the NEC to strengthen planning, coordination, accountability, and evidence-based decision-making across all levels of the organization. The creation of PMER responded directly to long-standing weaknesses in implementation. These developments introduced new political risks and made disciplined monitoring, early warning systems, and policy coherence essential. PMER operates through 2 main work streams: research and policy, and monitoring and evaluation. Since 2023, monitoring and evaluation has conducted extensive election research, including 5 national surveys during the 2024 elections, to track voter attitudes, leadership perceptions. To strengthen future readiness, monitoring and evaluation now tracks by-election performance on a monthly basis and is developing longer-term polling systems. The monitoring and evaluation work streams focuses primarily on service delivery and accountability. Comrades, Gender and Equity Committee. The Gender Equity Subcommittee is mandated to guide gender transformation across the organization and society. Since May 2023, the subcommittee has implemented a wide range of programs aimed at strengthening gender justice and equity. Key activities include an induction workshop to clarify its mandate, the Women in Diplomacy Dialogue, which promoted women's participation and working with COSATU. A major initiative is the Raising a Boy-Child program, launched by President Ramaphosa in November 2023. Other highlights include 30 years of women webinar that was held. Sectoral work, the ANC's character as a national liberation movement is expressed through its deep relationship with mass organizations and community structures, not only through its role in government. Sectoral work is therefore central to restoring the ANC's legitimacy. Sectoral work enabled the ANC to engage directly with organized social groups. A number of activities have been undertaken by this subcommittee. Disability Desk was formed by members with disabilities who identified the need for organized, structured, and representation within the movement. The desk therefore proposes a minimum 7% representation quota across leadership and deployment lists and strengthened political education and advocacy. ANC Awards system serves to recognize excellence, service, and commitment, while flagship awards such as Isitwalandwe, Siaparankwe, and the ANC Achievement Awards remain central to honoring struggle heroes and strong organizational work. Several critical gaps require urgent attention of this work. Comrades, following NEC approval in December 2024, 4 new awards have been proposed. Albertina Sisulu, Frinik Kinwala Award, Walter Sisulu, Long Service Award, Pindandwandwa Ndwandwe Award, Ruth Sikhumutsi Mumpati Award. International relations. Following the 55th National Conference, the ANC elevated international relations to a strategic political priority by assigning full-time leadership to the first Deputy Secretary General as the chair of the International Relations Subcommittee. This shift reflected the growing complexity of global politics and understanding that foreign policy is central to advancing South Africa's national democratic revolution. The NEC adopted a guiding political framework, the world we live in today, and the ANC's international relations, which now shapes engagements and political education. At the heart of the ANC's international outlook lie the principles of the Freedom Charter: peace, friendship among nations, national sovereignty, and opposition to colonialism and imperialism. These values are expressed through progressive internationalism, grounded in Pan-Africanism. Africa remains the primary focus of the ANC's global engagement. Comrades, the granting of full G20 membership to the African Union in 2023, followed by South Africa's hosting of the G20 presidency in 2025, significantly enhanced Africa's voice in global politics. Comrades, there are a number of activities that have been undertaken by our work in international relations. These include consolidating our work among liberation movements and the Liberation Movement Summit, which reaffirmed political solidarity in Southern Africa. ANC Leagues, ANC Veterans League, entered a period of renewal following the collapse of its structures after October 2022. In response, the ANC-NEC appointed a national task team in November 2022 to restore functionality, clarify membership eligibility, and rebuild structures and prepare for new conferences. This process culminated in the successful third National Conference of the Veterans League in July 2023 under the theme Renewal of the ANC to Advance the National Democratic Revolution. ANC Women's League. The ANC Women's League, established in 1948, remains a central force in South Africa's liberation history. Rooted in the National Democratic Revolution, the Women's League defines patriarchy as a structural source of inequality. Since 1994, the League has played a decisive role in shaping constitutional protections for gender equality. The 13th ANC Women's League National Conference reaffirmed gender-based violence and femicide as a national crisis requiring urgent attention. The Women's League held a successful national conference. The Youth League, 26th National Congress of the Youth League, was held in July 2023. It marked a historic turning point after nearly a decade of interim leadership. The Congress reasserted the League's mission of advancing economic freedom and a radical policy shift aligned to the NDR. Comrades, the Youth League actively participated in the 2024 elections campaign, securing youth representation in parliament and provincial legislatures. Umkhonto weSizwe, Liberation War veterans, present their first formal progress report to the ANC National General Council, following the establishment of a unified structure at the East London All-Inclusive Conference. The conference convened under the authority of the ANC and NEC after the disbandment of MKMVA and the MK Council. In January 2026. ANC provinces, Eastern Cape. The Eastern Cape remains a key stronghold of the ANC. Through its dominance, is steadily eroding amid declining voter participation. Service delivery challenges, economic hardships, and organizational weaknesses. In the 2024 national and provincial elections, ANC support dropped to 62%, with significant losses in Nelson Mandela Bay and Buffalo City metros, and growing opposition presence in Sarah Parkman district. While the ANC still controls most municipalities, several are hung or are under opposition rule, highlighting rising electoral vulnerability. Organizationally, the province faces a sharp decline in membership, down by over 37% since 2022, linked to demobilization, system failures in the national membership database, and weakening branch activism. Of 710 branches, only 483 are in good standing. Nonetheless, the PEC has stabilized the organization successfully, convened most regional conferences, strengthened unity and improved cooperation with the leagues, Umkhonto weSizwe, Liberation War veterans, and SANCO. Political education remains uneven, while over 200 branches have begun the ANC Foundation course. The PEC prioritizes mass work through campaigns. Governance in the province shows great performance. Economic growth was recorded in 2025, especially in mining, agriculture, and manufacturing. However, unemployment remains high, poverty persists. Municipal governance has improved in areas such as OR Tambo district, clean audits and grant spending, but severe challenges remain in Nelson Mandela Bay, Buffalo City and Makana, and several rural municipalities. Free State emerged from its 9th provincial conference in January facing deep organizational divisions, weak branch functionality, declining community confidence, and distressed municipalities. The PC placed organizational renewal at the center of recovery, prioritizing unity, ethical leadership, and accountable governance. Although the ANC retained the provincial majority in the 2024 elections with 51.8%, support has steadily declined from 2019, signaling reduced hegemony and an urgent need for visible governance improvement. Organizational renewal has focused on restoring collective leadership, stabilizing branches, and strengthening political discipline. The integration of the Premier into the ANC officials resolved tensions between the organization and government. Political education is the strongest renewal pillar. The foundation course has trained over 500 facilitators and 9,168 members, one of the highest outputs nationally. Weekly hybrid training has embedded ANC values, freedom charter, governance, accountability, etc. However, branch functionality remains weak. Of 319 branches with 34,200 verified members, only 2 remain within mandate. Membership systems challenges, gatekeeping, bulk buying remain some of the key challenges that the provinces face. Overall, with NEC support, the Free State is rebuilding capacity and credibility, but renewal must translate into stronger mobilization. Gauteng reflects the most advanced and demanding terrain of the ANC's support base, shaped by rapid urbanization, deep inequality, and economic integration. The traditional working class base has fragmented into a precariat of informal workers, the unemployed and insecure service sector labor, many of whom no longer believe ANC promises on jobs and services. The black middle strata, professionals, entrepreneurs, and public servants have largely shifted away from the ANC, prioritizing clean governance, infrastructure, and economic stability. Capital, both established and emerging, increasingly views the ANC alone as a risk to economic stability. In the 2024 elections, ANC support fell to 34.7%, confirming a historic loss of hegemony and forcing the movement into a competitive coalition environment. The ANC now governs through coalitions in Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni, and Tshwane. A provincial task team was appointed in 2025 to rebuild the organization, reconnect with communities, deepen political education, and drive governance performance. Organizationally, Gauteng has functional provincial and regional structures and active sectoral outreach. However, membership remains weak at just over 46,000 in good standing, with only 178 of 529 potential branches fully compliant. The foundation course rollout has trained over 47,000 members and strengthened political education. Comrades, KwaZulu-Natal experienced a severe shift in the balance of forces since the 2021 local government elections, with declining ANC support, weakened organization, and reduced control of key municipalities. The IFP regained rural ground, while the MKP drew emotionally driven support from ANC, from former ANC voters. The most damaging trend has been a rising absenteeism, particularly among historic ANC supporters who chose not to vote rather than defect. Urban frustration over corruption, unemployment, crime remain some of the challenges. The motive forces, workers, youth, women, rural communities, traditional leaders, and small businesses remain open to remobilization, but demand tangible improvements in services and ethical leadership. Organizationally, comrades, the province entered this period with weak branches, factionalism, collapsed political education, and declining discipline. In February 2025, the NEC intervened by appointing a provincial task team to stabilize the organization, rebuild unity, prepare for local government elections. Political education, branch rebuilding, and membership verification under Operation Ziveze form the backbone of renewal. Key campaigns in 2025 included Asibuyele Kai, the ANC is our home, and the ANC Friday with the communities, and Ukongolose, Ubuyela Kubantu. Limpopo, comrades, is led by the 10th Provincial Executive Committee, elected in June, overseeing 568 wards with ANC branches in every ward. The ANC continues to draw inspiration from the liberation of stalwarts and sustains grassroots mobilization through Litsima campaign. Organizationally, Limpopo remains relatively stable with 520 of 568 branches in good standing and successful completion of all 5 regional conferences in 2025. The province has implemented extensive political programs, including commemorations, community campaigns, and the 70th anniversary of the Freedom Charter. Since July 2025, the ANC has contested 15 by-elections in Limpopo and retained all wards. A provincial election strategy for the 2026 local government elections has been adopted and rolled out across all regions. Limpopo is one of the best performing provinces of the African National Congress. Comrades, Mpumalanga retains overall political dominance and governs across all municipalities. But this strength is increasingly challenged by declining voter confidence, uneven service delivery, reduced electoral participation, and weakened organizational cohesion in some areas. Although the ANC remains the majority, the 2024 elections revealed sharp drops in support in key municipalities. Critically, this decline was driven less by opposition growth than by rising voter abstention, with 43% of registered voters not participating. The motive forces in Mpumalanga remain historically loyal to the African National Congress. The decline of mining and energy sectors, including the closure of Komati Power Station, has weakened labor organizing capacity. Organizationally, the ANC remains functional in Mpumalanga. The ANC has met consistently since 2022, and key subcommittees of the organization have been meeting. Mpumalanga have shown great determination of comeback and organization in rebuilding the ANC in the province. It can be counted as one of the most promising and efficiently run provinces of the ANC. Northern Cape. The ANC in the Northern Cape remains a strong political and organizational position, characterized by unity, stability, and functional structures. The 10th Provincial Conference, preceded by all regional conferences, reflected high levels of organizational cohesion and avoided the divisive conflict seen elsewhere. The conference reaffirmed that rebuilding the movement reconnecting with the people, and recommitting to revolutionary values are central. The ANC in this province has won even wards that belong to Democratic Alliance in the African National Congress. Of the province's 232 branches, 218, 94%, are in good standing, reflecting high levels of organizational stability. Their membership stands at 54,767. Comrades, Northwest. The Northwest enters the mid-period under pressure from organizational strain, declining voter confidence, and municipal instability. This province of Northwest is one of our surprises in the last elections. They performed very, very, very well in this province. That election reflected vulnerability but resilience of this province. The province retains functional PC, RECs, and branches, though capacity and discipline remain uneven. Bujanala is the strongest region with high mobilization and political education uptake. Ngakat Mudiri Mulema has a large membership base but weak branch performance, while Kenneth Kaunda and Dr. Ruth Mumpati show stronger structural stability. Western Cape operates in the most hostile political terrain in the country, having been out of provincial power since 2009 under continuous Democratic Alliance governance. ANC support has steadily declined, worsened by the rise of the Patriotic Alliance among colored working class communities and the MK party in former ANC strongholds. In response, the NEC established a provincial task team to strengthen the province of the Western Cape. The Revolutionary Alliance, comrades. The Revolutionary Alliance between the ANC, SACP, COSATU, and SANCO is a unique and historic political formation rooted in the shared vision of the Freedom Charter and the National Democratic Revolution. Established in the early 20th century and strengthened through successive phases of struggle, the Alliance has always reflected a non-racial multi-class coalition of the motive forces of social change. While each partner retains organizational independence, the Alliance is strategic, not tactical, because it is united by a common ideological program aimed at building a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and prosperous South Africa. Since 1994, the Alliance has contested elections jointly under the ANC leadership, developed shared election manifestos, and aligned deployment into the state. The Alliance has achieved major democratic and socio-economic gains, including constitutional protections, expanded basic services, infrastructure development, and improved social wage. However, it has also been weakened by the corrupting effects of incumbency, which have fostered corruption, patronage, and factionalism across the movement. These challenges have eroded discipline, unity, and revolutionary values, with the ANC bearing the heaviest political cost. Debate about restructuring the alliance has persisted since 1994, culminating in proposals for reconfiguration to adapt to democratic conditions. Although a joint discussion document emerged in 2019, the issue remained unresolved at the 55th National Conference, which mandated the NEC to conclude the debate with attention to theory and organizational form. While all partners agree the alliance must be renewed and reconfigured, disagreement persists over its future character. The gravest challenge now facing the alliance is the SACP's 2024 decision to contest elections independently. This is viewed by the ANC as a strategic rupture that risks fragmenting the motive forces of the NDR and weakening the democratic movement following the electoral setback in 2024. The ANC has pursued multiple bilateral engagements with SACP, COSATU, and SANCO to avert further divisions. Despite these engagements, the SACP comrades remains committed to independent electoral participation, beginning with by-elections and proceeding to local government elections. Engagements with SANCO reaffirmed its continued commitment to the alliance, the Freedom Charter, and ANC-led electoral campaigns, while also highlighting concerns around local government dysfunction. COSATU engagement stressed that alliance challenges are structural rather than ideological, supported reconfiguration, and agreed on urgent tasks including an alliance economic summit, joint political education, coordinated international work, and strengthened policy coordination. Despite these efforts, bilateral engagements with the SACP in 2024 and 2025 failed to bridge the disagreement over independent contestation. The ANC has since resolved to reassess dual membership to protect its organizational integrity. Planned Alliance Political Council and Alliance Summit meetings were delayed due to scheduling conflicts, but remain necessary. The NEC concludes that despite setbacks, the NDR is not defeated. The alliance must be urgently convened post-NGC to resolve its crisis, prevent fragmentation, and safeguard unity ahead of the 2026 local government elections. But most importantly, the NEC have agreed that post this National General Council, we must mandate the NEC to engage in the decision about the implication of the Communist Party decision. How practically we are going to manage that decision, because that decision raises a number of challenges, including, in the main, dual membership. So the NEC will have to deal with that particular point, but it will be strengthened now in a discussion in this General Council, in the commissions, about what approach we need to take going forward. Comrades, the National Caucus, ANC Parliamentary Caucus, reviews the work that caucus has actually done. Following the 55th conference, the caucus prioritized transformative legislation, such as the NHI, Bella Act, Expropriation Bill, Public Procurement Bill, Climate Change Bill, and Pension Fund two-pot system. These laws became central to the 2024 election campaign. However, the 2024 electoral setback and the subsequent formation of the GNU fundamentally altered parliamentary dynamics. Comrades, the ANC no longer holds an outright majority in committees or the National Assembly and must now navigate ideological contradictions within the GNU while lobbying opposition parties to pass legislation. Policy contestation intensified as reflected in the delays to the 2025 budget and opposition-led challenges to government programs. The caucus also faces serious internal challenges due to the loss of institutional experience. Only 33% of MPs and 20% of whips were retained after the elections. This weakened the Whipparis political management capacity and exposed gaps in research, debating, skills, and narrative control. The ANC also lost its majority in portfolio committees, forcing it to rely on persuasion rather than numerical dominance. Weak study culture, limited research capacity, and competing demands between parliamentary constituency and organizational oversight work further constrained performance. Despite these constraints, opportunities remain. The ANC retains its significant governing authority within the GNU and a majority in the NCOP. The caucus is shifting from introducing new laws towards strengthening implementation and oversight of existing progressive legislation. Sector specialization partnerships with think tanks and strengthening parliamentary constituency offices are key priorities. The caucus adopted a 5-year and annual plan in January 2025, aligned with the ANC manifesto and NEC Lekgotla priorities. Oversight is driven through study groups, clusters, and systematic monitoring. However, accountability remains uneven, with 346 parliamentary questions outstanding as of October 2025, highlighting ongoing challenges in executive responsiveness. Constituency work has been elevated as a strategic priority. On policy implementation, we're faced with challenges across and in terms of social transformation, governance, peace, justice, correctional service, and economic transformation. Achievements include the signing of the Bela Act and so on, which we have mentioned earlier on. Economic transformation. The NEC, the ANC enters the NGC confronting a difficult economic terrain and the realities of governing through GNU. The 55th National Conference mandated the rebuilding of a people-centered economy anchored in industrialization. Politically, post-1994 electoral outcomes where the ANC received 40% of the national vote fundamentally reshaped the balance of forces. Local government, comrades, this followed the emergence of 70 young municipalities, widespread governance failures, financial collapse. The LGI developed a clear program of action which is being implemented. We established a new Department of Arts, Sports, Arts, Culture and Sports Subcommittee. This department had to deal with a central focus work which was about advocacy on the Copyright Amendment Bill. Education and Health Subcommittees oversees 3 closely linked pillars of social transformation. Peace and stability. This committee presents a number of challenges that we are faced with, of which some have been processed as we speak. But the mammoth of task of monitoring the current developments in the country. Archives and Heritage continues to do the most important work of overseeing and maintaining the archives of the African National Congress. Legislature and Governance Subcommittee deals with matters that relate with the legislative and governance, and it convenes also regularly. Social Transformation Committee also deals with matters of the ATC, including some of the campaigns that include gender-based work, legal and constitutional affairs, This year marks 30th anniversary of South Africa's constitution. This committee, among others, deal with those particular issues and coordinating that important anniversary. Comrades, President and the General Council, that is the report. Thank you.
Amanda. Anamba, Amanda. Yabona ke. Amanda. 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 Amandla. 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 Okay. Amandla. Amandla. Matla. Aruna. Matemba. Aena. Comrades, you can sing the whole evening asizuyeka le program. Instead of 7, nizawamba ngo-9 apha. Kwenze ntoni apha? Amandla. Comrades, kune difference enkulu phakathi kwe-choir competition ne-NGC. Those are two different events. Asikho choir competition up, sikwi-NGC. So kune items that are still outstanding that we must attend to. And in reality, kukuba comrade, ziyathenda irrespective of what time it is. So uba nifuna ukucula kubethu 9 kulungile, but sawuyiqhuba iprogram lo kubethu 12. Okay. Now kukho lo mntu une-phone apha. Khona umuntu one-phone elapha. Andiluyicima. Umuntu wale phone makazoyilanda. Nokuthula. Kuba lufolelo nokuthula. Yeyakho. Ye. Yeyakho. Yekatolash. Yeyakho levon tolash. Uphambene nyani. Ukuga kakubi. Ulahla ifoni. Hayi ukuga kakubi. Mamelani. Let's now get into the financial report. Nicule kamandi and anibona icapacity yokucula ninayo. Now masiyeke le yokucula icapacity singene financial report. Uba imali eze organization, do you understand them? Must present weke sinibone bani understand. Hlala phansi awuzuzikhomba apha. Akho mtshotshweni apha kukhomba mna. Hlala phansi.